Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to caterhamracer.com and our second live stream of Caterham sim racing esports style action. Scott Woodwiss here, alongside with the man with the plan with the broadcast, Chris Hutchinson, and we are getting set for what is the third round of the caterhamracer.com Caterham Academy Series. Now, we should mention this is not drivers who are complete novices, although there are one or two drivers who are set to be contesting this year's Academy, and even one or two set for 2021. But this is merely drivers racing in the entry-level spec Caterham, the Caterham Academy car with 125 brake horsepower, and they'll be competing around the home of British motorsport, Silverstone in Northamptonshire, but it's on the big one, it's on the Grand Prix circuit, where we'll see plenty of action and slipstreaming on the long straights. We're just coming towards the end of the practice session, and many of the drivers from last time are back on the grid. We've got 23 drivers in the server, including one or two new ones in the field. And looking at the orders, we go towards practice with about 3 minutes to go. Let's bring Chris in. First of all, we should say, if he doesn't mind me saying so, we should say happy birthday to Chris Hutchinson. Of course, it is his many happy returns for today, and it should be quite a fascinating night, hopefully, to crown it's been, I'm sure, a bit of an interesting day given the situation we're currently in right now, Chris.
Birthdays are a birthday, isn't it? I've had plenty of them, so we'll just it's another one in the long list. But yeah, Silverstone, big old track for what are the lowest of the ladder of the Caterhams. And so, you know, the lap times are long today. We're looking at over 2 minutes 30 seconds, so getting your lap in is going to be really, really important.
So these cars, of course, as we say, this is the entry-level step for Caterham racing in the UK, and also in places like France, who do have their own Caterham Academy. Now, these cars in real life, as we go on board with Chris Skillicorn, as we come towards the end of the practice session, 125 brake horsepower, an open differential, 5-speed gearbox, and they have purposeful low-grip Avon tyres to teach car control. I've always compared Caterhams to be the Formula Ford of sports cars, because they really are a car in which you can learn a lot in terms of racecraft and driving and car setup purely on mechanical grip. It really does teach you a lot, and there are things that you can learn in a Formula Ford and a Caterham that you can't really learn anywhere else. And they do also even say, when anyone's applying for Caterham Championships, it's been known in the past, if anyone's had any previous race experience, Chris, they've pretty much told them, it doesn't matter if you've driven a Lotus or a Porsche or a Ferrari or something like a Fiesta or a Honda Civic in any one-make championships, if you're driving or racing a Caterham for the first time, pretty much put all of that out of the window, because this is such a different experience, as you know firsthand. It's a driving experience like none other, particularly when it comes to racing these things.
It's absolutely raw. You know, there's no driver aids. It is you, the car, and there's not a lot of that car. It's a very small thing in real life, and yeah, absolutely, the driver can make an absolute difference, and you feel that connection to the tarmac. And not only that, because of the tow and because of the number that we have on the grid, racing is guaranteed. It's guaranteed close, and it's fun. And the academy is the place where a lot of the Caterham drivers start out. You know, it's the start of their journey, so it's an exciting time for them.
Certainly is. So we've had this is, again, forgive me for sounding ignorant, this is round 3, isn't it? We've already had, I think, 2 rounds so far. Am I correct?
Yes, this is round 3. Now, I can't even remember the first. I think we went to Donington. They're all mushing together now, but yeah, Donington. And anyway, yeah, we're now at Silverstone. I can tell you that. I think we did Silverstone National as well. So we've already done the top half of this track, and we did the bottom half in the 420s. So we're just linking it all together now with the Academy car.
Yes, we did, yeah. We can tell you, just looking back, the first rounds we had at the national circuit, it was wins apiece for Chris Skillicorn and Steve McMaster. Will Rossetti, who was a star in last year's Caterham Road Sport Championship, and also was a competitor in the Caterham Academy before that, so he knows this spec of car relatively well. He picked up a pair of seconds, but it was a third place each for James Fowler, and also for the man who really, in many cases, Chris, has been the runaway race winner for the most part in these Caterham sort of sim racing esports series, and that's Harry Senior, because he certainly has done the business, particularly in the 420Rs in the opening couple of rounds. And if we look towards the rounds we had at Donington Park, he actually did pick up both wins there at the second meeting. 2 wins for Harry Senior, along with a second place each for Will Rossetti and David Rowe, who's one of the main masterminds behind DPR Motorsport. And then it was your good self, Chris, that got a 3rd place in one of the races, and Steve McMaster in the other. So a little bit of a mixture there, but it does seem so far, if we go on board with Steve McMaster as we come towards the end of the practice session, that Harry Senior, whether it's the Academy car or the 420R, he seems to have both these cars nailed, because anytime he steps into one of these, virtually, he's absolutely flying.
Now, he's not an old chap. He's only 19 years old, but what he is a simulator generation. So he has been absolutely. He's been driving a Assetto Corsa pretty much since he was able to reach the pedals, and so he knows the game inside out. He's proved he can translate that onto speed on the real track. But you know, equally, he's proved that he's quick in the sim, but also he doesn't make mistakes. So he's kind of a double threat, which is annoying for all the other drivers.
He's certainly one to watch for, as he has been so far. As you say, he was one of those drivers, even particularly in certain situations in the 420R races back on Friday evening, where even though he did shuffle down to as low as about 3rd or 4th position, he still found a way to work his way back towards the front. And here is the onboard shot from Harry Senior, his virtual representation, hands working well on the steering wheel and the gear stick. Of course, Grand Prix circuit, of course, home of the British Grand Prix, the British World Endurance Championship, and also MotoGP as well. It is one of the best circuits in the country, and there are some fantastic sections here. And because, as we know, with the unaerodynamic nature of the Caterhams, and I say that politely because for obvious reasons that will become clear in a second, because these cars don't cut through the air as slick as something that's a bit more aerodynamic, because they punch quite a large hole in the air, at least in real life. When you get packs of them together, they do seem to produce great racing. Because we've got lots of long straights here, it should hopefully produce some great racing back and forth, particularly down the pit straight and also on the run down towards Stowe Corner, down the Hangar Straight.
I mean, Caterham's, they'll overtake anywhere, so I don't think you can just put it down to 2 corners, but nevertheless they are 2 good opportunities, and also into the loop, and Village is also a great opportunity just to dive down the inside. I hope that people keep that under control, because it's very easy to lock up the wheels in this particular car.
Well, fingers crossed. I know some people do get a little bit, particularly on the opening laps, a little overexcited to some of these corners at Silverstone. Quickly before we go into qualifying, for what it's worth, James Murphy was quickest in practice, 2 minutes 36.716, and Harry Senior only 600ths of a second back, and just behind him was James Wingfield with David Rowe and Matthew Lewis. Now, that record actually on the server for Silverstone Grand Prix in these cars was actually set by, I believe it was David Rowe, wasn't it, in a 2:36.5, which is the fastest time we've had on the server all week, so which is interesting, or at least in the last couple of days. Qualifying is now underway, bright sunny skies over here at this virtual Silverstone representation. So quite simply, they will get a 10-minute qualifying session, and it's pretty much free for all. Go out there, set the fastest lap time that you can, fastest lap gets pole position. It is simple as that. But the difference with this qualifying session compared to any others in the Academy and also in the 420Rs, Chris, is that whilst the circuits like Silverstone National and to a certain extent Donington Park National are shorter circuits where you can get 3, 4, 5 laps in if you're quick enough, here, because we're on the full Grand Prix circuit, a lap here takes about just over 2.5 minutes. So you've really got to be on it, and you're only going to get 2, maybe even 3 flying laps at best out here. And because you've got 20 plus cars out there trying and track time and find space, trying to get a clean lap is not going to be the easiest thing in the world, particularly when you've got a long circuit and on very fast high-speed seconds, particularly when you've got long corners like Brooklands, but also that high-speed shuffle through Magnus, Beckett and Chapel. Trying to find space here is going to be really at a premium.
Yeah, and we're following David Rowe now, and obviously he's one of the top contenders, and we expect him to be quite near the top of the field, but he's got 2 people in front of him, so it's one of those things you can't let go of a lap, because it will, it takes too long to come round and ease off and have another go. You've really just got to keep going regardless. Obviously, if someone has a spin, that's going to be their lap over, and they're really going to have to hope that one of their other 2 is going to count. So we might see a bit of a grid that's shuffled today, which can always lead to good racing, so I'm not against that at all.
So I don't think anyone is, to be fair. I think because if we get a shuffled up grid, it could mean some drivers who you'd normally expect to be towards the front, particularly from what we've seen in the last couple of races, trying to fix their way through. One driver made a bit of a spin already through the Maggotts and Beckett's complex, trying to get it wrong.
Carefully. Well done, he's got round.
He did just about. I don't think he interrupted anyone too much, but everyone's on their outlaps at the moment. And here's the other thing in qualifying that we'll see, Chris, is that whilst people we say are going to try and find space, at the same time, if you can find a drafting partner, particularly on the straight, it can help you find that extra tenth or two. And given how strong the draft is in real life with these Caterhams, any extra tenth or two is certainly going to be advantageous.
Oh, and he's got clear.
Denver almost gets clattered into by the other car in front, but he spooked him out of the way. And now he's got some nice clear track, for the moment at least, to try and get himself onto a lap, which could potentially give him provisional pole position.
And I think that's what he'll be hoping now, and I think he'll be quite happy to see the clear track. You're right that the tow would give him those extra few tenths, but again, being around and close to other people is more of a liability at this stage.
Because also, it's really twofold in many cases. You've got the risk of other cars making a mistake, but also as well, you've also got the outwash that you might get from some of the turbulence that some of these Caterhams might generate in terms of any aerodynamic grip, which is not much, but at the same time it could be enough to start to eat away at your front tyres if you're not too careful. David Rowe just gliding the Caterham through the complex of the village and into the loop, and it'll be through the high-speed flat-out kink of Aintree and onto the Wellington Straight to continue on through the first pass of this lap. And we look at time in terms of lap times left, and here's the example, Chris. We've got 6.5 minutes left to go already, a minute and a half till we get to halfway through the session, and drivers are only starting their first flying lap. So it really is a case of, if you're going to get a lap here, you've really got to hook it up. Otherwise, as you say, we could see some very topsy-turvy grids come the first race.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you need to watch out for is the top drivers. You'll see them hooking up with all the apexes. If you ever get to sort of drive one of these cars, or in the simulator, or even in the real world, that's the most important bit, is to really get that front end hooked into the corners. So be interesting for people, viewers at home, just to keep an eye on that you'll see the top of the field do tend to hit their apexes. As you go further down the field, you might start seeing people drifting a little bit wide, and that's where all the time leaks away.
So heading up towards now 5 3/4 minutes to go. David Rowe about halfway through his first flying lap. We'll start to get representative flying lap times up on the timing board in a second, but everyone is pretty much just completing their outlaps here. A couple of the cars running in pairs here to try and get some kind of tow, but in many cases in this qualifying session it pretty much will be every driver for themselves. They're not going to want to try and help each other to get a tow or two. A little bit of dust kicked up there from David Rowe as he uses all the track on the exit of Chapel. And now down the long hanger straight. He has got a bit more traffic in front, which is one car weaving side to side there, which is not going to help him on the run down towards this very fast but long right-hander. Thankfully the car that was weaving has managed to see that there was a couple of cars that are hot lap out of the way and put his foot down.
I think that was James Wingfield, and I imagine that he was weaving to try and get some heat in his tyres. But yes, that's not going to be a good sight for Dave, who obviously just wants a nice clean line. So obviously James has had and James actually stopped on the racing line there. If it was James, that's a pretty sad way for that lap to end.
Well, whenever it was, I have to agree that lap time was relatively ruined now. The first couple of flying laps have come in, and it is Harry Senior, kind of the man of the moment in form, with straight out of the bank 202 minutes 36.866 to go provisionally on pole position with only 4.5 minutes to go. James Murphy has clocked a 237.352, and thanks to getting held up on that lap, the lap time hasn't come through yet for David Rowe, but when it does it'll be rather substantially quite slow, I'd imagine. Will Rossetti's third fastest, 237.721. Then there's a gap to Steve Arnell, 238.202, and quite a sizable gap to Tom Willis, who of course has just fresh come out of the Academy from last year, battling with Blair McConaughey. He was last year's Academy White Group champion, if I'm correct. He's just been displaced by Steve McMaster, who goes fifth on a 238.291. So lots of varying lap times here, and everyone trying to find their own little bit of real estate on the track to put in a quick lap time here. Everyone now who's on their second flying lap is just about getting on with it. But I'm looking at the map tracker, and pretty much the entire first half of the circuit is at least 3/4 of the field are all populated between the Wellington Straight and the run into Copse. So it's quite, everyone's trying to space out, but at the same time it's one of those things where, you know, you think you want a quiet day at the beach and everyone has the same idea. Same thing here really. Everyone wants that little bit of space on the road, but everyone's got the same idea, and it's getting a little bit crowded out there.
Yes, absolutely, and you can't afford to wait to come out the pits because time is so limited, so you've got no choice but to be with a group of others, and you can see the long stream of cars sort of heading down. Everyone does seem to be giving themselves at least a little bit of a gap here. So there should be the scope on this lap to put in some good times. I think what we saw on the end of the last lap was James was just trying to make himself a gap to the car in front, but didn't actually allow for the car behind. So a little bit of lack of awareness, I'd say, there. All the laps now, but especially for David Rowe and James, who obviously got affected by that, really, really important they get one in now to make sure they're pushing up the grid.
Yeah, after that mistake, David Rowe actually put in a 2 minutes 44, so he's really got to get a move on to try and make sure that he can get himself much higher up the grid. Otherwise, he's going to have to start carving his way through in race 1. This group of cars, I mean, the top 2 in the time so far, have actually pulled away to give themselves their own little bit of space. So Harry Senior is going to come across the line and complete his second flying lap to see if he can improve on a 2:36.8266. And the answer to that question looks to be no, not quite.
Oh, James
Murphy does
improve.
Yeah, James does improve, but Murphy does improve his time, though, as you say, 2:36.953. He's only missed out by 87 one-thousandths of a second, but he's only got time for, well, one more lap, and that's it, because pretty much now, anyone who's starting a lap now within the next minute and 45 seconds will be allowed to finish it, provided it's a clear one. And so, again, that's the nature of this long circuit, coupled with the fact that these Academy cars only have about 125.
Okay, I think Scott has left the commentary booth temporarily, so we will aim to get him back in. But yes, only 125 horsepower, so does need, such a long lap, and if to think that only 8/800ths of a second is separating those 2 laps, it shows that there's some great racing. Hello, Scott.
8.
We lost you for a bit, Scott, but it sounds like you're back in the commentary booth now.
Okay. Apologies if I dropped out for a second there. So yes, I was mentioning just go through the top 10 for a moment. We had Harry Senior with the fastest time, then James Murphy and Will Rossetti up to 3rd place now. But what's incredible at the moment, Chris, is the top 2 have got quite a sizable margin lap time-wise over a single lap compared to the rest of the field. It looks as though the battle for 3rd with the podium and the top 5 positions and in the top 10 is going to be quite close, given how very close the lap time sort of delta is between them. But Senior and Murphy, pace-wise at the moment, both on track right now, position-wise, and in time, look as though they're almost in a race of their own. I
don't think we've seen the full picture yet, though. Like I said, there will be people who are easing off just on a couple of key areas to make sure that they actually get the lap sorted. So I think that's okay. People will just be hoping to get an all-right grid start, and you can see David Rowe's popped up into 6th now, so he's at least going to be within sight of the front of the grid rather than where he was before, right at the back.
He's got one more chance if he can string together this last flying lap to improve his time a little more. Let's just see where he's on the tracker here for a second. He's currently in 6th. Now, but it's showing me he's aborted his lap on the hanger straight, I think, so it looks as though he's decided not to go any quicker. As for our leading pair, they're just coming around the final couple of corners to see if they can improve. Remember, it is Harry Senior on a 2:36.8. Can he improve on his final flying lap? And the answer is no, and neither can... No, Murphy can, though. Wow, what a time, 2:36.787. And James Murphy dethrones Harry Senior from pole position and goes top by 79 one-thousandths of a second. So Senior will not start on pole. And Matthew Lewis is coming with a superb final lap time, 2:36.942, to bridge that gap between the top 2 and the rest of the field, 2:36.9. Will Rossetti stays 4th. Chris Skillicorn's also improved his lap time on that last lap to go 9th fastest. There are still 1 or 2 cars out there which might start to improve and get themselves within the top 10. Another car that's on a good lap, it looks to be Steve McMaster. He's in P5. He's just coming through Vale and Club Corner now to finish off his lap. He's got to improve on a 2:37.287. He's half a second off pole at the moment. Exactly. Can he improve on that on his last lap? Comes across the line. And he does not. He stays 5th quickest and does not improve his time. He's exactly half a second off pole position. So he will line up on the 3rd row alongside James Wingfield. So James Murphy making the most of the real estate he had around him, Chris, and managing to pop up with a spectacular lap time to take pole position right when it counts at the death of the session. The gap remained the same, but he just swapped that position, so he'll take those 800ths of a second this time. That's exactly what he was looking for. As I say, at least I don't call him Superman for nothing, because he can pull something extraordinary out of the hat when it's required. So We are getting set then for our first of 2 races, 15 minutes each. And as qualifying is now finished, this is how the grid is set to line up for race 1. It is James Murphy on pole position, with Harry Senior alongside him on the front row. It's Matthew Lewis and Will Rossetti on row 2, and Steve McMaster and James Wingfield on the 3rd row. David Rowe is on row 4, alongside Paul Fernerhuff, and then Chris Skillicorn and Steve Arnell round out the top 10. 11th goes to Andy Steele, 12th goes to Tom Willis, last year's Academy White Group champion. Jeff Newman and Mark Lipitsky are on row 7. Mark Ryder, who's a former Caterham mechanic and now spends his time spannering LMP2 and Porsches, and then he's on the 8th row of the grid with Jim Earlham. Then it's Alan Curtis and Mike Hilton. Tom McEwing, lower than he'd like to be in the Academy car, 19th place on the grid alongside John Paul Sawyer, no relation to Gordon as far as I'm aware. And also we have Richard Hoare and Carl Jones to make up the 22 car field as they start to pop up onto the grid. So as we say, 15-minute race. It's pretty much from start to finish. Have at it and try and behave as much as you can. And with Murphy and Senior on the front row, this is going to be an interesting race, Chris, because obviously James is going to want to try and break the winning streak that Harry Senior's had. Harry, we know, is quick anyway. Other drivers in the mix, like Matthew Lewis and Will Rossetti, might bring some surprises. And I think others like David Rowe, who are back in 7th place, I would expect, Chris, he's not going to stay there for long. If he can take advantage of some moves in the early first few corners, maybe in the first lap or two, he might start to cause a problem for the top 5 if he's allowed to work his way up a couple of positions in the opening lap.
It's important that there's a gamble there to be had, isn't there, of making moves early when the pack's close, but also staying out of trouble. So if people are crashing in front of you, then it's best to let them do that, and you can then make a nice easy pass. A real balancing act. But you're right. I think we will see him come back through the field. I think he's going to be pretty motivated to do that. Let's put it that way.
Certainly will be. Certainly wants to do his best for DPR. Of course, David Murphy looks after DPR Motorsport, and he'll want to try and do them proud. So, as she's looking it down the grid, pole position is on the right-hand side of the screen. You'll see the typical black and orange car of James Murphy on pole position. The grey and sort of luminous yellow car, that is Harry Senior at the wheel. And Matthew Lewis is in the I think that's the roughly sort of orange-coloured car on the right-hand side, and then it's the red and white car, Will Rossetti, in the 2nd row of the grid. The blue car with the black nose is Steve McMaster, and James Wingfield just behind him on the 3rd row with, it looks like it's a blue and red striped car in 6th position. So almost set for this first race to get underway here. Of course, in real life with the Caterham Academy, they would have started theirs at the sprint, but we're not having to worry about that too much. It'll be a sprint down to Abbey Corner as the lights go up for race number 1 of the caterhamracer.com Caterham Academy, and away they go. It's actually a cracking start from Harry Senior from the front row of the grid. James Murphy just didn't get the launch he needed, and down towards Abbey Corner, it is Harry Senior who takes full advantage and leads the way into Abbey Corner for the first time. It's also a good start as well by the looks of things from Will Rossetti from the 2nd row of the grid as they wind their way through already. There's 2, 3, 4 cars coming together in the background up at Abbey Corner, but they've all got away relatively unscathed as they head into the complex for the first time, and they pile their way in through the village and then through a loop. Looking down the outside to try and take 2nd place back is James Murphy going side by side Rossetti, and then side by side again. There's more contact in the background. One car's gone around, looks like Steve Arnell, another one possibly could be Paul Fernerhuff. So those 2 drivers hitting stripers to come onto the Wellington straight for the first time. And Harry Senior, Chris, has absolutely got a rocket-propelled start, but it's now all action stations for 2nd place, as is in a typical Caterham race. They're almost 2, 3 abreast for 2nd place into Brooklands. Yeah,
James Murphy actually got a really poor start. I'm not sure if he missed the lights or missed a gear or selection or something like that off the start, but that Harry absolutely made the most of that, and he has got his gap, and I'm sure that he'll be really hoping these guys keep fighting. You can see David Rowe there on the inside of James Wingfield, and he's going to be looking to make that move up. That's personal after the qualifying incident they had.
It was those 2 that came together. It was Wingfield that held up Rowe's lap, so it's a bit of a wheel banging match on the run down towards Copse to make up for that. Instead, Rowe has got the inside line and forces the white Caterham through into 5th position. So Senior trying to extend the gap. He's got 1.4 seconds already on the battle for 2nd, which is a 3-way scrap between Murphy, Rossetti and McMaster. And now David Rowe has cleared James Wingfield. He will start to make that a quartet rather than a trio, taking lots of curve as he goes through Maggots and Beckett's here. It's a fantastic shot to watch these Caterham Academy cars wind their way through the high-speed complex here at Silverstone. Personally, one of my favourite sequence of corners in the world. And there you see them off onto the hangar straight for the first time. So top 6 are pretty much in a pack all together, although Chris Skithercorn's going, wait for me, I want to jump into this battle too. And behind them, look at the scrap going on for 8 between Mark Ryder and Tom Willis. So they go wheel to wheel. Also in there looks to be, I think, Chris and Andy Steele, I think, as they come down towards Stowe Corner. Little puff of smoke there from Chris Skithercorn as he braked for Stowe. And there is Mark Ryder, who's got high expectations here because he's driving the boss's car. That's CEO Graham McDonald's Caterham Academy machine. The red and white car with his tartan sort of on the side, I think, somewhere as well, I'm sure, around that car. Either way, making his way through, and Ryder trying to get the best of an undercut through Tom Willis, but he can't quite make it stick through the complex of Club and Vale, and onto the pit straight they come for the first time. So Senior leads the way then, Murphy in second place, it's Rossetti in third, followed by McMaster and Rowe. And it's James Wingfield in 6th position, Skillercorn in 7th, then it's Willis, Ryder and Steele rounds out the top 10. And Lipitsky, Newman, Arnell, McEwing, Fernerhuff, Hoare, Curtis, well Hilton's just got past Curtis for 17th place. JP Sawyer, Carl Jones and Jim Earlham as a side-by-side action here, and looks as though James Wingfield, Chris, is not done with David Rowe. He wants to try and repass him and saying, look, I apologise for the incident, but don't try and hassle me too much. I want that position back, because the harder we fight, the further these guys are going to get up front up the road. Yep,
they need to keep that in mind. They're going at it hammering on. They're really not relenting. I think they must have a very similar speed, so because neither of them can shake each other, especially with the toe, just to keep you in the battle. So it will just be about these mistakes. You see about that apex I was talking about and how important it is, but Dave's got nowhere to go around the outside there, so he'll be looking to get a run down the sort of old pit straight.
And he's not close enough for the switchback, or as I say that, he might well be. We've seen a Wingfield runs wide, and he almost bangs wheels. He got too loose on the exit of Luffield Corner over the corrugations. As a result of that, David Rowe nearly got classed into for a second time in this evening's racing. So they come down towards Copse Corner. David Rowe fires it back up the inside line, and there's more contact. Wingfield misjudged that one, and the pair of them come back together again. And now David Rowe finds himself facing in the middle of the road, thinking, what on earth was all that about? So he now comes back onto the road, but he's down to, looks like 10th position, if not maybe just outside that. You're down to 11th now, as see that James Murphy is trying to still chase after Harry Senior, with Rossetti and McMaster nose to tail for 3rd position. Head onto the hangar straight now for the second time. And already we're getting to a third of the race distance. Look at that, 10.5 minutes gone, or to go, I should say, rather, in this race. Down the hangar straight, the classic shot looking up the hangar straight as they come towards Stowe Corner. But Harry Senior has this race once again in command at the moment, but James Murphy's going to try and use all of this clear space in front to make his way through if he can.
James will be aware that it's only one mistake between him and catching up, and as I said earlier, it's very easy to make that mistake. Another thing to watch is the curbs at Silverstone are incredibly wide and forgiving, so you'll see the drivers using absolutely every bit of those curbs, but there is a limit, and the clerk of the course will actually give them a penalty, whether that be a drive-through or tell them to slow down if they do take too much of that curb. So it's a bit of a balancing act. To go quick, you've got to take those curves, but there is a limit, and they will bite back, and it'll cost you a lot more than you'll gain if you misjudge it.
Well, Murphy's hoping not to get cost too much as he tries to close in. The gap is stabilised at about 1.5 seconds as they turn their way into Village and Maloop. Just keep an eye on that scrap for 3rd place behind between Rossetti and McMaster as they turn their way into Maloop. With you, Adrian McMaster's getting a little bit impatient now, stuck behind James Wingfield as they turn him through Aintree onto the Wellington Straight. And this could be a prime chance here as we hop on board with Steve McMaster. There's his view as he goes up onto the rev limiter and up another gear. In fact, he's right on the rev limiter. In fact, he'll be starting to change down a couple of the gears for Brooklands as he hits the brakes. A little spit of flame from the exhaust of James Wingfield. Never seen Academy cars do that, but at least in the sim here, they certainly are full of overrun on the fuel. So they come into Brooklands and Luffield, a little bit of understeer from Wingfield as he just missed the apex, but he'll get it on the exit. He puts his foot down now on the sprint through Woodcote and up through Copse Corner again, with only 8.5 minutes to go.
It's actually Will Rossetti in front of us at the moment, so we're following on closely behind Will Rossetti. He was Academy champion last year. Well, no, he wasn't champion, was he? But he was certainly competing all the way through the season. Really, good stuff, and it shows how much progress you can make.
I'm getting my red cars mixed up because I'm pretty sure Wingfield was in a red car last year trying something else. I'm getting my colour schemes mixed up.
Real life, Scott. This is the sim world.
I should know better because I've been doing Sims since 2012, so poor form. Anyway, looking back to these for third place, it's still, as we say, you're correct, Will Rossetti, not James Wingfield. He's back in sixth, trying to chase after Chris Skillicorn. But those two in fifth and sixth are in a little bit of no man's land, really. Skillicorn's dropped Wingfield, and he's now trying to chase after this scrap for third place. Now, what's interesting now is the gap at the front has come down by 0.4 of a second. It was 1.5, it's now down to 1.2 as we look further back here. And this is a battle that's going on for 11th, 12th and 13th place. Steve Arnell on the tail of both Jeff Newman and Lipitsky in 11th place. And ahead of them, there's a big battle pack going on. That's between Tom Willis, Mark Ryder, and D. Steele, and the recovering David Rowe. Arnell looks up the inside line into the right-hander at Stowe Corner.
We saw Arnell having issues on that opening lap. He got caught up, I think it was, with Paul Ferniehoff and some others there. So he would expect to be coming back through this field, but I don't think he's making as much progress as maybe he'd have hoped.
He does seem to be sort of getting a little bit caught up in some of the traffic here through the battling, and that's the trouble. If you get caught up too much, you start to lose cars to the time around you, both in front and behind, because you start to lose the cars in front as they drive off from a distance in their own private battle, but also the cars behind can see what's going on and they can lap a little bit faster, and that allows them to push on for the remainder of the race to try and make up a position or two. There's more side-by-side action going on just in front as we go back towards James Murphy, who has got the gap down to under a second now. So it looks as though coming to the second half of this race, Chris, that James Murphy's found a second wind of sorts here, as it looks, I think, finally as well at the same time, Steve McMaster has also displaced Rossetti, although looking behind, Rossetti's not quite finished yet, but some interesting developments in the top four here as Rossetti looks to the outside into the left-hander at Brooklands and tries to go deep around the outside, but he'll have to go for the undercut on the exit to get the momentum for the next corner. Master, as you do at Silverstone, plants the car right on the middle, right in the inside of the road, to prevent any chance of slipping back past on the exit for Rossetti. It looks as though it's now the hunter has become the hunted, and now Rossetti gets the chance to chase rather than be hunted down from the car behind.
Yeah, and out front, Harry Senior will be absolutely aware of that gap that's coming down. He'll be desperate to keep it above that half second where the toe really does start to make a difference. So yeah, that won't have passed him by, and the pressure is now piling on. Can James Murphy make it before the end of this race?
Can James Murphy live up to his nickname that I bestowed on him, Superman, and pull off quite a superhuman job here of being able to be the one that beats Harry Senior's 4-race winning streak, having won both races in the Academy cars at Donington and then winning both races at Snetterton in the 420Rs on Friday evening that we showed you in our first live stream. Come onto the hanger straight, and Murphy, you can see he's visibly closer to Harry Senior and trying to just duck into the slipstream as he comes down towards Stowe Corner once again. This could be an opportunity here. The clock is going to hit 5 minutes exactly, so only 5 minutes to go here, which is roughly round about 2 more laps to go here at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. But the gap is still stabilising at around 0.9 of a second, and the pair of them have got about a 3-second margin now over this battle for third. So it's uncertain for the lead, uncertain for third, and also have to say, looking further down the order, it was a little bit uncertain for 7th down to 10th, but it looks to me as if something's happened because Mark Ryder is now 2 seconds behind David Rowe. Rowe's on the back of Willis as they come up towards the end of a lap. So Murphy's on the charge here, but as we know from Harry Senior, Chris, in his previous races, catching him is one thing, to use the age-old term, but trying to get past him is a whole different kettle of fish. Yeah,
I think last time out at Snetterton, he maybe managed that gap quite nicely. He just had that little bit of extra speed, but it's looking like James, and he's taken another 10th out of him now. It looks like James has got the speed, so it's a very different thing, feeling like you are being chased rather than managing that situation.
I have to say, whilst you're looking at that, very, very valid point, as you mentioned on that one, but at the same time whilst looking at that, I couldn't help notice that was a lovely little undercut from David Rowe to get past last year's Academy White Group champion Tom Willis. Kind of David saying, have that one on for size in the virtual world. Now it's on to 0.7 of a second between Senior and Murphy down the back straight underneath the bridge and towards Brooklands once again for the penultimate time, because there is only 3.5 minutes to go here in this first race of the evening in the caterhamracer.com Academy Series.
Going into the loop on that lap, actually James got it down to 0.4, but I think he just made a slight mistake on the exit, which put it back out to the kind of 0.7. Although it's still coming down, this is going to be a race to the line.
Yes, it really is, and McMaster's still not being He's not able to get away from Will Rossetti either for third place. He's still got a gap of around about 2 tenths between them. Rossetti stays in the draft on the run down towards Copse. In fact, it's less than a tenth, so it could be very close here into Copse corner for third place as Murphy continues his pursuit of the lead. And Rossetti has got past for third place. You can see the graphic on the left-hand side has seen third position switch around. Masters wide on the exit of Copse corner. He's going to try and fight back as they come towards Maggotts and Beckett, but you cannot go side by side unless you're uber brave between the pair of them. Oh, McMaster slides back through. Impressive stuff from McMaster. He was not going to let that go. He's like a rabid dog holding onto a postman's leg. He was not going to let go of it for any want nor fear or anything else like that. So McMaster gets back into third place. And meanwhile, as that's happening, James Murphy, you can see, is now once again 4 tenths behind Harry Senior. He's got the taste of the draft, and he's got that stiff of an opportunity to make sure he can try and get past. He's only going to have one more lap to do it, as we're inside 2.5 minutes to go in this first race.
He just made a big mistake. Sorry, he made a big mistake coming into the stone on that lap. His rear end stepped right out, and unfortunately that's now cost him the time that he had got.
He's close back in under braking, so he's... I think one thing you can't say is that he's not committed. He certainly is pushing as hard as he can. But the ironic thing is that Senior's probably the one that's not pushing as hard, because even though he's out there trying to hold on to the lead, it's Murphy that's the one that's got to do all the worrying and all the chasing. As we see side by side for third place again, these two cannot leave each other alone. McMaster holds on to third place. This reminds me of Verstappen and Leclerc last year in the F1, when these two just kept on going side by side and banging wheels and passing and repassing each other. As we watch them come through Abbey Corner, a little wide then from McMaster as he holds on to third.
Yeah, and I think they've swapped places maybe 2 or 3 times just, in the last 3 corners that we've been watching. These two are again going at it hammer and tongs, not for the win, but it is for that final step of the podium.
I think as long as it's a good race, I'm not sure if they care exactly what the position it is, but the bragging rights of a podium position is certainly going to be an incentive as they come onto the Wellington Straight for what is going to be the last time. There's only 1 minute and 10 seconds left on the timer. As we go back on board with Rob Rossetti this time. This is his view, staring at the back of the black and green Caterham. Which way is he going to go? Darts to the outside on the sprint down towards Brooklands corner. Will he be last of late breakers? The answer is maybe. Loxton inside front, but looks for the undercut because McMaster's gone too deep. He's going to be side by side with the green Caterham into the complex at Luffield. Tries to go back round the outside, but he slides wide, and McMaster has to put the power down to hold on to third place. But now they're on the exit, and Rossetti's got a lovely little toe now through Woodcote on the run towards Copse. He's going to do it again like he did a lap before. Meanwhile, the gap at the front quickly has gone to 7 tenths of a second. Rossetti looking to the outside line, side by side between the pair of them for third place. This is for the final step on the podium. Into the right-hander at Copse corner, but Master has the line, but Rossetti doesn't care. He goes round the outside, but has to be hung out to dry as they come down towards Maggotts and Beckett. This battle, Chris, is going to go all the way to the line.
I think that the front battle and this one, they've been absolutely brilliant. I think the third place battle has been a little bit more intense, certainly more swaps of places, but as you can see, James Murphy is actually getting very close again to the back of Harry Senior. Can he do it? We're into the last few laps, last few corners.
He was attacking the curbs like I've never seen him attack them before, and he's right underneath Harry Senior on the sprint down towards Stowe Corner. First and third are not settled here as here comes Murphy looking to the outside to get the undercut. Senior's cuts it off, looks to do the switchback. I think he was trying to do a Manson PK move there, sideways in the entry to Stowe Corner, but so was Senior. There's only 2 corners left to go. Where's he going to go this time? Will he dart down the outside and fake the move and go up the inside into Vale and Club? It's the complex. Here he comes to the inside line, but Senior throws the block as they come into Vale and then Club. And looks for the inside, he slides wide, he's gone too deep, and Murphy almost goes around and half spins it. That's the end of his charge for the lead with a few corners to go. And despite his best efforts, James Murphy threw everything at him, but he couldn't make it work. Harry Senior will make it 5 wins in a row, but he only just held on from a very vicious attack from James Murphy in the end for several laps. As for that scrap for third place, it will go to Steve McMaster from Will Rossetti. And apologies, we almost forgot about everyone else. We've got James Wingfield in 5th position, Chris Skillicorn gets 6th, David Rowe recovers well to finish in the top 10 in 7th. Then it's Tom Willis in 8th position, Mark Ryder gets 9th, and Steve Arnell takes the top 10. But actually, Ryder, I think he picked up possibly 9th on the line, I think it was. If not, he got lost out on it either way. 11th place, I think the positions are changed because we've got 1 or 2 cars going to the pit lane, I believe. It says Lipitsky's 11th, Newman's 12th, Arnell's, I don't think that's right, 13th. But anyway, rest of the field goes streaming through.
There was some shenanigans coming out the last corner, actually, and it looked like some differences over the line actually happened in quite quick succession because there were cars facing backwards and all sorts.
Oh dear, as it possibly could be either one or two penalties handed out, or simply just a quick shuffle around in the order. So as it shows on our screen, Tom Willis has 8th, Andy Steele has 9th, and Paul Fernhoff rounds out the top 10. Lipitsky gets 11th from Newman in 12th position. Then it's Arnell 13th, Ryder 14th, and Hilton rounds out the top 15 with Curtis, McEwing, Sawyer, Jones, Earlham and Hall rounding out the 21, with Earlham and Hall just coming across the line shortly. But a pretty intense first race with plenty of battling at the front of the field between the scrap for first and the scrap for third, and that certainly lived up to plenty of expectations that we had, Chris. That was an excellent battle. 2 separate battles at the side of the positions on the podium. Great stuff.
James absolutely threw everything at that last lap, didn't he? He was monstering the curbs, and into that last corner he really gave it his all without risking taking out Harry, but he did cost himself, but he had that gap over the third and fourth battle, so it didn't cost him too much in the end. But nevertheless, what a great race to start off this evening's racing. We've still got another one to go. We do.
15 minutes of more high-speed Caterham Academy action. And we'll see the grid in a second, because the grid for race 2 is going to be set by the results of race 1, as you can see on the screen here then. So we've got Harry Senior and James Murphy will start on the front row together. That's going to be fireworks again. I wonder if this time it's going to be roles reversed, if Murphy can nail the start this time and Senior possibly bogs down. We'll have to wait and see. McMaster and Rossetti are going to resume their battle for third place on the second row of the grid. Then James Wingfield and Chris Skillicorn pick up row 3. David Rowe is going to have to try and work his way back towards the front, and hopefully has a less than eventful race this time from 7th. He'll start alongside Tom Willis. Then it's Andy Steele and Paul Fernhoff rounding out the top 10. Mark Lipitsky and Jeff Newman in row 6. Steve Arnell and Mark Ryder on row 7. Mike Hilton and Alan Curtis on row 8. And Tom McEwing, John Paul Sawyer, Carl Jones and Jim Earlham, with the last car on the grid being in 21st position. Well, not quite. We've still got Richard Hall and Matthew Lewis at the back of the grid, so that's unfortunate for him. Didn't see him in race 1, so possibly there's some problems on his end, but he should be at the back of the grid in 22nd. We did have the last car on the grid. Who was the last car on the grid? I missed that at the end.
I think it's me. As a broadcaster, I must have a car in the game to be able to show you the pictures.
No, I think there was another car on the grid which made it 23, I think, but so there's 1 or 2 more, I think, on there. So joined in. So Matthew Lewis starts at the back of the grid. As we say, also in there as well is another car in 23rd position.
I think
so
we
a minute and a half to go.
I think we saw Matthew Lewis disconnect actually from the game that on the first race, so that's probably why he's now back in. But he's got all to do by being at the back of the grid now.
So watch for him as he can try and carve his way through. We should, at this point, whilst we're waiting for this second race to get underway, to say a thank you to Ben Obrose. I think his first name is Benoit, who was the original creator of both the Caterham Academy and the 420R cars. And he's very graciously allowed the caterhamracer.com series, both of them, to allow these cars and us to broadcast them as well. And he's also working very hard, bless him, on a fantastic set of paint schemes based on the Caterham drivers that are competing, their sort of real life cars, whether it's their previous Academy cars or the paint schemes they're going to run this year as well. And that is only going to add, Chris, to the authenticity, because we're going to get these drivers in the paint schemes which they are still planning to race in this year once we get back underway. But it does mean that it adds a bit more authenticity to it and shows these cars can actually drivers can show their true colours rather than just pinching somebody else's livery.
Absolutely, and it'll make our job a little bit easier seeing that they're consistently in the same colours rather than changing each time, which is always easy to catch you out.
And I'll tell you what it will do, it'll give me some good spotter action when we do get racing underway, because I'll have learnt some of the colours already, which will be handy. So, lights are up then. Second 15-minute race of the evening for the caterhamracer.com Academy Series. Once again, Senior, the race 1 winner on pole, James Murphy alongside him. Watch also for McMaster and Ross and Rossetti on the second row. Red lights are all on, they are out. Race 2 is underway. Much cleaner start this time from James Murphy. He holds on to second place. It's an equal sprint down towards Abbey Corner. Everyone in the first 4 or 5 positions just slotting into turn 1, although Rossetti has already gone to pinch third place from McMaster. One car's gone spearing off onto the runoff tarmac already in front of the camera. We'll catch who that is in a second. I think it might have been James Wingfield, actually. He's dropped down a couple of spots. Either way, Senior leads into the complex for the first time. Murphy in second, McMaster's third, Rossetti's 4th position. And it's David Rose up 2 spots to 5th already. Good start for David. 6th for Wingfield, 7th for Tom Willis, who's battling with Chris Skillicorn. Then Lipitsky and Newman as they turn their way out of the loop and through Aintree for the first time. And apart from 1 or 2 fisticuffs towards the back of the field, Chris, so far, there's a couple of battles going on already down towards Brooklands, but a relatively clean start from everyone for the most part. And as I say that, there's 3 or 4 cars spinning around in the background already. So I basically cursed myself there. I was hoping to do a completely clean start, and all of a sudden there's shenanigans going on in the background.
It was incredibly busy at that start though, so it was almost inevitable. Like you said, you did put the curse on that one, I'm afraid. Hopefully they'll be all facing in the right direction again very shortly. But the battle at the front looks to be as though it's picking up exactly where it left off. We've got Harry and James going at it with a little gap back now to third, Stephen Master, and then Will Rossetti in fourth. It looks like we're in for more of the same, except for this time David Rowe is back in the game, again followed by James Wingfield. But again, can he push it through and make spin up and make this top order topple a bit?
I think of all the people who wanted behind him at the start of the race, I think it's clear to say that James Wingfield is the last person David Rowe wanted. He's probably looking at his mirrors and thinking, oh no, not you again. You cost me qualifying, you cost me in race one. Not this all over again. It's almost like Groundhog Day for David Rowe right now. Either way, the top two are together, and as you say, it's pretty much battle lines resumed from where it was at the end of race one just a few moments ago. And James Murphy is right underneath Harry Senior this time. He wants to right the wrongs of race one and go for the lead early doors. Here he comes to the outside line. Is Superman going to pull off a super move into Stowe Corner? He's got the run, he's going to go down the outside. Senior's not going to give it up by an inch. They go through the right-hander together. And James, in the first race, was known to be a little bit overexcitable, getting sideways through some of the corners, but he's trying to get the undercut on the exit. Senior runs wide over the curbing on the exit. Now they make the run down towards Valen Club, and Murphy's looking to the outside line, diving down the outside. He's going to get the inside run if he can for the next part at the club. And just sees the nose chopped off in front of him by Senior. He swept across. What this has only done, Chris, is brought now Steve McMaster into play, who has broken away from the cars behind. And not only that, but David Rose also got past Will Rossetti. James Wingfield's in there as well. So this duel at the front now, Chris, has become a trifecta between the three cars. Senior under threat from Murphy, but the pair of them are under threat from a charging Steve McMaster.
To Steve McMaster there, but like you say, David Rowe cost himself some time, obviously getting through those cars, but he is in fourth place right now. So hopefully he'll be hoping that this battle ahead is going to cost themselves time, so that he's got an opportunity to catch up. Because in the first race they didn't give each other the speed was just there throughout. A little bit of a tap there from James Murphy on Steve McMaster, but it doesn't cost each of them too much. But Harry has got a teeny gap now, and we saw in the first race it's so difficult to bring that gap down once it's there.
Yeah, all that battling between Murphy and McMaster's only brought them to play, but look at the scrap for fourth place behind them. It is now Rossetti defending from David Rowe, and here comes Wingfield charging down the outside, trying to get with position. Rossetti with a little bit of oversteer on the apex of the corner, but Wingfield just goes down the outside, or at least, Wingfield goes down the outside and says, cheers for that, Will. I'll take that fifth place back if you don't mind. And he's been shuffled back down to sixth position. Rowe's back up to fourth now, and he's now starting to reel in McMaster once again, who, after his early attack on the top two, has managed to lose a bit of momentum. That might have been from the small little bit of wheel banging he did with Murphy, who has now tried to break away. And it is as it was in race one. You're absolutely right, Chris, is that only you give Harry Senior an inch and he'll take a mile. He will absolutely run away with the lead. But Murphy, we can see, ultimately in some cases on this does appear to have a little bit extra pace if he's able to make the most of it. And we saw, at least on the last lap, if he needs to attack and take more curb than he needs to on somebody's corner than he would normally would, he will go for it, because James Murphy's he's very persistent.
James Murphy's lost it on the exit.
It's not going to work. Up the inside, he's been collected by Steve McMaster. That's a real shame. So as I said, that he was pushing just a little too hard on that occasion. Harry Senior will drive up the road and says, oh, where's my battle partner gone to? He's completely disappeared off the road for a second. He's rejoined in 8th position, which might become 9th if he's not careful, because Paul Fernhoff is going to try and squeeze past him. But unfortunately, Chris, all that hard work from James Murphy and one slip of concentration, and away it goes, unfortunately. That's a real shame.
Yeah, that is a shame. That it was obviously leading up to another great battle. I'm sure Harry Senior doesn't see it that way. He's certainly going to be looking forward to it, and he's definitely got a nice gap now. However, James Wingfield up into second, and looks like Will Rossetti up into third. So David Rowe has lost out to both of those two.
So we've got two exciting battles going on behind Harry Senior's bid for the lead. So the gap is at the moment almost 3 seconds now as they come across the line together. Wingfield in second place, Rossetti third. Then you've got this excellent 4-car scrap that's going on behind them. That's between Rowe, Skillicorn, McMaster, it's between those three, because Murphy's trying to get back up the road into 7th place. So he's made up another spot at the expense of somebody else who went spinning down the order. As to come into the complex here, and Wingfield is trying to get past away from Rossetti. You just saw there in the background, David Rowe is starting to make inroads once again on the 2 cars in front of him. So where these cars were battling around about 2 laps ago at the start of the race. Now trying to just bring them back together again. Just behind, we see Mark Ryder getting his elbows out. He's battling away with Tom McEwing into the complex. Just behind him is Jeff Newman. And they come through the village in the loop, and they're still banging wheels. So they come through, looks the left-hander at Village, and onto the AstroTurf goes McEwing, pushing a little hard and a bit more. And now also getting into play here looks to be Steve Arnell recovering after a difficult race one, and also Tom Willis. So Tom Willis back in 16th position, looking to try and make up some pace here if he can. 5 cars practically all together, but Mark Riley's the one that's leading him a merry dance into Lovefield, and he's trying to close up on JP Sawyer in front. So 11th place for JP Sawyer and 12th Mark Ryder. But at this point in time, it looks as though that Ryder's just making the most of the clear air around him and not getting involved in too many fights. Speaking of which, James Murphy's got some work to do here. Finds an old friend in Steve McMaster. Hello again. He made contact with him a couple of laps ago. He's done it again into Cops Corner. Goodness me, that's not going to sit well with Steve. And also, that seems to have held up Paul Fernerhuff in the mix. And look at the man, he's up to 7th place now as a result of all that. Matthew Lewis from the back of the field is up to 7th position, saying cheers for that, boys. I'll slip past if you don't mind.
And here we are on board with Matthew Lewis. So coming out onto the hangar straight, we've got James Murphy just ahead of us. Like you say, right from the back of the field up to 7th, that must have been quite some epic race for him so far. How much further can he make it? The two of them are probably going to have to work together to move up through the field. Harry Senior, meanwhile, has got a nice 3-second gap out front ahead of James Wingfield and Will Rossetti rounding out the top 3. David Rose actually catching up with James Wingfield now. And so maybe, again, David Rose had a bit of a topsy-turvy race, but maybe he can make it back in.
Potentially, he's got all the makings of it if he can start to close in a bit more on Will Rossetti. Let's look at the gap between the pair of them. It was a 2-minute 36.7 last time by, which was quicker than Wingfield, so that's certainly positive in as far as Rose concerned. Chris Skillicorn goes through 5th position. There's the scrap between Murphy and Lewis there, and they are starting to try and work together. They're only about half a second between them, so if they can start to push forwards, they've got time for a couple of laps to try and make their way through if they can. And there's David Rowe in the white Caterham chasing after Will Rossetti in the red car with the white stripes. And now they come up through Village, through the loop, and through Entry Corner onto the Wellington Straight. So down towards Brooklands there, coming towards the camera is Harry Senior. 3.2 seconds to the good in the lead of this second race of the caterhamracer.com Caterham Academy. And then next comes the Cavalry for 2nd, 3rd and 4th all together. Then 5th position for Chris Skillicorn. And again, as you say, working together now do appear to be James Murphy and Matthew Lewis, and they are starting to close in. Not working together so much now. Looks to be Lipitsky and Master, as Master goes back up the inside of Lipitsky into Brooklands. Rest of the field goes pouring through. Arnell's gone through in 14th. Newman, McEwing, Earlham's in there as well. And everything's getting a little more civilised now, Chris. There's not so many sort of wheel banging in cars going every which way now. Everyone's starting to settle down to a little bit of a rhythm now with roughly 5.5 minutes to go. I think they realise, well, say that, looking down at the inside line looks to be, I think that was possibly James Wingfield trying to make a move on Rossetti there as they come through into the complex, or rather it might have been Murphy and Lewis battling amongst each other. Either way, I say it's about to calm down. Now they've all kicked off again.
Yep, so Matthew Lewis does look like he is fighting hard with James Murphy, which is going to cost them time, but I guess at least they get a good race out of it. I'm sure they're having a lot of fun.
That's what it's all about, although there is an air of competition between these Caterham drivers, and Lewis is trying to stay up the inside line over the curve here to get past Murphy. But again, the harder they fight each other, the easier it's going to be for the cars in front of them to make a break, and also the cars around them, behind them, to start to catch up. But now it's become something of an 8-wheeled Caterham Academy car, as Lewis is physically pushing Murphy down the back straight to create a much bigger hole in the air in terms of punching their way down towards Stowe Corner. He darts out to the outside line to get the switch back if he's looking for it. He's going to try and go around the outside, in fact, James Murphy. What a move this could be. But not if there's contact. Out onto the AstroTurf and onto the runoff area goes it's Matthew Lewis. Slots back in behind Murphy. Can't say this race isn't eventful, especially for James Murphy, as Lewis is really attacking, hopping over the curbs and charging up the inside again through club. So Lewis is absolutely on it here. He's out for revenge now. He's sort of thinking, right, I tried to help you once. He shoved me out wide. Now the red mist has descended. It's game on for 6th position. So to watch these two, as these should with these two, because Will Rossetti is having to defend for third place and a podium spot now from David Rowe on the run into the complex, and Rowe makes the dive up the inside for third position, and into a podium space goes David Rowe. So the DPR man into third. Now, he could try and catch after James Wingfield. The trouble is, he's 3.4 seconds up the road. Well, 1.7 seconds up the road. Wingfield is 3.4 behind Senior. So Rowe's now got 1.8 seconds to make up in the next 3 minutes 45 seconds if he can. The only question is, though, Chris, if Rossetti starts to go with him, which I suspect he will be, how much is Rossetti going to help him or hinder him, depending on what Rossetti's plan is to try and get that podium place back?
Well, judging by the breaking into Brooklands there, I don't think he's going to help him at all. We saw James Wingfield and Dave Rowe have had a couple of incidents already, so maybe the magnets are attaching between those two cars and Dave can use that to pull him in. But I think he's got potential to make this gap up, but because James Wingfield is in clean air, he may just have enough. 1.6 seconds may just be too much to make before the end of this race.
So 3 minutes to go then. That's roughly around about, I'd say, this and one more lap. So we're on the penultimate lap of this second race here at Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit in these Caterham Academy cars. And I have to say the gap between the top two has stabilised at 3.5 seconds. So Wingfield's not allowing Senior to get away too much more. But it's a case of really that no one's really in a position at the moment, unless there's any kind of mishap from Harry Senior, and that's highly unlikely, but never say never in sim racing. But it's highly unlikely that Harry Senior is going to be dethroned from this race, even though Wingfield is certainly giving it a red hot go to close in after him. But he's got to be careful, because behind him, David Rowe, he's got the gap down to 1.5. It's going to be a big ask for David Rowe to find a second and a half in the last lap of the race to overhaul Wingfield. And of course that could also, if it does happen, it's unlikely, but it's possible, to even allow Will Rossetti a chance to get on the podium. But he has to try and work together if he can with Rowe. So far he seems unwilling to, which is obvious as he's looking out for himself. There's Chris Skillicorn in 5th position, and then these two haven't stopped battling either, Matthew Lewis and James Murphy. And Lewis is ahead of Murphy now, so into 6th position goes Lewis. And the rest of the top 10 is McMaster, Fernerhuff and Lipitsky. Here is James Murphy scrapping away with Matthew Lewis as they make their way through Club Corner to start the last lap of the race. There's 1 minute and 40 left on the clock. This will be the last lap of tonight's racing action. It's been a cracking couple of races we've had so far at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit to add to our races at Silverstone International. Whoops! And also Downton Park Grand Prix is Murphy getting aggressive again. Off of the runoff area goes Matthew Lewis. Now whereabouts is he? Is he slotted in behind? Or has he disappeared? He must be there somewhere. Ah, there he is. He was just waiting for his opportunity. He tries to throw it back up the inside, but Lewis was unsuccessful in trying to re-pass Murphy by shoving him out of the way there. Wasn't always going to work that time. And now they come through the loop and through Aintree. Skillicorn looks safe in 5th position at the moment, whilst they come down towards Brooklands, a little wide on the exit over the curb from Matthew Lewis. And then McMaster, who's recovering in 8th place, only 1.4 seconds back. And Fernerhuff and Lipitsky rounding out the top 10. Ryder still ahead of Willis by 2 seconds. And as for anyone else that's down the order, and James Murphy goes spinning into the complex of Brooklands. Well, he's been a bit over-exuberant all night so far in both these races, and that, I'm afraid, was the icing on the cake from that one, just losing out on 3rd position.
Yeah, he was absolutely late on the brakes. It's so easy to over-brake into that corner, especially if you're slightly offline. It gets really dirty offline, and he just lost the rear end and he could not get it back. So that is the end of his charge back through the field. And yeah, certainly some aggression shown there by James, maybe a bit overly so hopefully we can rein that back in. But we're following back now with David Rowe, who has got the gap down. He's got it down to a second, but this is the final lap we're on, and I just can't see it happening. What about you?
No, it does seem to be, although it's a valiant effort to close the gap in, I don't see him possibly making that move unless something extraordinary happens to James Wingfield in the last couple of corners. But into those last couple of corners comes the man who really at the moment cannot be stopped. He's quick in an Academy car, he's quick in a 420R car, and he seems to be relatively quick in a real-life Caterham race car. There does seem to be no stopping the youngster Harry Senior. He makes his way down towards the Vale and Club complex for the last time, nice and steady under braking. He's literally been drama-free, even though he's had major attacks from the likes of James Murphy all night long. But he's fended them off one by one. He will head through the final couple of corners. It is the perfect 6 from 6 so far this season, at least in our broadcast so far, or at least in a row so far for this run of form for Harry Senior. 6 in a row for Harry. It is second place for James Wingfield, and David Rowe managed to close the gap in, I think, to less than a second in the end to get third place. Rossetti gets fourth. Fifth place goes will go to Skillicorn. Sixth will go to Lewis. Seventh to McMaster, and his eighth place is going to go to Ferneyhough and Murphy. It's going to be close, but I think across the line it's going to go to Ferneyhough, only just from a recovering Murray, who feels he probably should have got more from that race, but his own couple of costly mistakes puts him down to 9th. Lipitsky Garron's at the top 10. Mark Ryder in 11th place. Tom Willis 12th. And Steve Arnell 13th. Newman 14th. And JP Sawyer completes the top 15. And then Earlham, Curtis, McEwing, Hilton, Steele, Martin and Carl Jones, who didn't finish the race, sadly. He is the only DNF, but Martin will be the last car that will come across the line and round off the 21 cars left in this race. As Mike Hilton thinks, well, I'm done with the race now. I'm going to park it here, I think, in the gravel trap, which is how it is. But that means, as we say, 6 wins on the bounce from Harry Senior. His form is simply shattering so far. Here's the final result on screen. So Senior wins it, his second win of the night, his 6th in a row. James Wingfield at second place. David Rowe gets, I think, a well-deserved third place after his troubles in race 1. He managed to fight back well in that second race. Fourth will go to Will Rossetti. Fifth for Chris Skillicorn. Sixth for Matthew Lewis from the back of the grid, remember. That's a cracking drive for Matthew Lewis. Seventh place for Steve McMaster. Eighth for Paul Ferneyhough. Ninth for James Murphy. He will feel he should have got more, but a couple of costly mistakes pushing a little too hard is what lost him what could have been a potential victory had he stayed with Harry Senior. And then rounding out the top 10, Mark Lipitsky to complete that top 10 finishes. In 11th goes to Mark Ryder, 12th to Tom Willis, 13th to Steve Arnell, 14th to Jeff Newman, 15th to John Paul Sawyer, then Jim Earlham, Alan Curtis, Tom McEwing, Andy Steele and Mike Hilton round out the top 20. Well, that was quite a night of racing, wasn't it, Chris? 2 fantastic battles in the Academy cars on that long circuit, and even though it was only 5 or 6 laps in each race, the laps that we did get and the racing that we did have as a result of that was absolutely spellbinding. Some great battles up and down the field. Yeah,
some really close racing again. Silverstone didn't disappoint. It's like you say, it's a long lap, but actually it just means you get loads of different corners rather than repeating the same corners, really quickly. And the long straights give everyone a chance to sort of pull back gaps and mistakes. And we saw that from David Rowe that he had a really topsy-turvy race, but he still managed to drag it back onto the podium. So I think that's a great performance. But who's going to stop Harry Senior? He's got the pace and he's got the consistency, and the rest of the drive. We said last time he would be the one they were all aiming for. Well, they aimed and they missed.
Yeah, I think the closest one that did manage to hit a bullseye, to use that term, I think was James Murphy. He was inches away from possibly getting to the lead. He got into the lead at one point and then just threw it all away with a mistake. So, and then from there it kind of seemed as though his race went a little bit more downhill in race 2. Race 1 was a better race in terms of being able to charge after him, but even then he was sort of making 1 or 2 errors, going a little too deep and too quick into Stowe Corner. There's no doubt in James Murphy's pace, but maybe just a little bit pull back a little bit of the exuberance and the eagerness in his driving, and potentially we could see him as I think arguably on pace he is at the moment the biggest threat to Harry Senior. He just needs to be a little more consistent and just rein that enthusiasm in a little more, and if he can do that, be a little more consistent in his attack, then potentially he's got every potential now to dethrone Senior's run of victory so far and to not make it 7 from 7 or 8 from 8 in the next rounds, provided he's going to be around for the 420 hours later on this week.
I think it just shows how fast Harry's going, though, in that to even get close to keeping up, he has to he has to push to the absolute limit. I think we said last time out that he's only just had his new simulator installed, and so he's still getting used to it. So maybe we'll see some of that consistency come back when he's got back used to using his rig again. So good job from him. We've got some other people that are likely to join the series coming up, so maybe they can offer a fresh challenge. But at the moment, we really want to see some other drivers get involved and take those big trophies back.
Yeah, we absolutely do. I know that Matt Shepherd's Shepherd is shaping up to join the field, so he'll be another driver that's familiar to the likes of, particularly James Murphy, so he'll be one to watch out for in that field, and a couple of others who have also been talking about getting themselves set up. I'll ask the question. I don't know if we've got anyone that is around to pull in for an interview that was noteworthy from the races that we had. Do you see anyone in the Discord server, Chris?
Yeah, so we could try and get a driver interview. Let's see who's about. How about we have a word with James Murphy and see what he felt about that race?
Yeah, why not? Let's do that.
Hey, James, have you got us?
Hi, how you doing?
Excellent. Good stuff. Hi, James. Scott and Chris here. I think to say your night was eventful, I think is an understatement, because you were you just missed out on the victory in race 1, and then race 2, it seemed to be one thing after the other. Really, just talk us through how that was all for you.
Yeah, I just had a chat with Harry in the virtual Parc Ferme. It was thanking the marshals and the race officials. No, it was really the second race. I mean, I actually had a car ghosting on the line, so I got a really bad start. My fault, got distracted, and Harry got into the lead. And to be honest, the pace he's shown in practice, I thought that was it, but just managed to reel him in. I think I put 2 personal bests in a row, just 10th after 10th. But all credit to him, he withstood the pressure brilliantly. And I think you were commentating, Scott. I've thrown a dummy on Dan French in real life down into that chicane once, and I tried the same thing. But Harry was wise to it. He defended it well, and I just tried. The only other option was to carry more speed around the outside, and car wouldn't have it, or I ran out of talent, as they say. And half spin and second place will do nicely. Really happy to get a podium.
But I think one thing that's clear it does show is the fact that obviously you've managed to get to the grasp of these virtual occasions pretty quickly, and you're using all the knowledge you've got from having gone through the ranks of academy and road sport, etc., and you've managed to take to it pretty quickly. So hopefully going forward for the next couple of rounds, provided if you're around for the likes of Not Kill coming up and then Anglesey next for the academy cars, you could be in a better position the next couple of rounds to really start to take the fight to Harry Senior even more and possibly start to steal some victories from him.
Yeah, I'd like, if I can be in that group at the front, I'd be really, really happy. Take me a little while to get used to the 420. I mean, credit goes to the guys who've modelled the cars. The Academy car, it really does handle quite like the real thing. And there's a couple of differences. The tow's a bit less. Maybe that's nothing they can adapt in the game. But it's really, really good. Whoever did the setup as well for Chris and team, it's really, really good. And so yeah, it's been quite relatively easy to adapt to in that sense. The 420 is another thing. The pace that people like Harry, Dave Rowe, and others showed at Snetterton. I've got a little way to go there, Scott.
Scott, I think we should also try and have a word with Harry, don't you? I'm going to bring Harry in as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Congratulate the man of the moment. Hi, Harry. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I've been listening to you.
Oh, he's listening in. Good stuff. Harry, 6 from 6 so far, of course, in a row at least from the races we've had so far. Pace-wise, there seems to be no stopping you, but there was times in those 2 races where James and co almost had the measure of you in terms of challenging you, but that looked like a bit of a close run thing in a couple of occasions.
Yeah, it's getting harder, I'll admit. Yeah, the first race, just watching him slowly shave temps off the gap, it was a lot of pressure, but I tried to keep calm. I wasn't doing the quickest lap times in the world. I was just trying to keep it consistent, hope that maybe he would make a mistake and fall off, or just tried to hold on. And then obviously last lap he caught up to me. I had to defend going down to Stowe and then into Vale, and obviously he spun going into Vale, and I came out with the victory, which is always good.
And then the second race, it was a little bit more of a walk in the park. There was a little bit of challenge early on in many cases, but I think it just shows that also you've been able to adapt to both cars, the Academy and the 420R car, very different sort of performance levels, but you seem to have adapted equally to both of them pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's that they are very different. I do a more another race series with Caterhams as well, and I make sure that to tell them that you have to keep it to whatever car that is happening in this series, so that I don't need to jump from one day to the other to a different car, so I can get used to it. So from now on, it will be in the 420. I've never been around Not Kill, so next week is going to be a challenge.
I think you'll have a comfort to know that it is the correct way around. It's not the reverse way around that we had the last time a couple of years ago when Caterhams went up there. So I think if that's a bit of a comfort, then you'll be sort of starting from scratch as much as anyone else, I think, given that unless they've gone to Not Kill themselves, it's all a little bit of a new circuit for everyone.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Good stuff. Well, listen, congratulations again. 6 wins in a row so far, and it's you're the benchmark everyone's got to try and beat now. So let's see how you get on at Knock Hill, and fingers crossed you can do the business again.
Yeah, I do hope so. Thank you to both of you.
No problem at all. Good stuff. Well, that seems to be it then. That concludes the action from tonight's broadcast of the caterhamracer.com Caterham Academy Series, our first broadcast of this series. So if you watched along, then thank you very much. We have to say thank you. I did mention it briefly, but earlier on, I did want to say a big thank you to Benoit or Benobris, who has been on the Discord server with us, who's been putting together liveries. I did say it earlier on, but just want to reiterate that our thanks again for him allowing us to use the mod and to be able to start putting together the liveries, which should be available from, if not Knock Hill, from next week when we go to our next couple of rounds after the end of this week. So you'll be able to see some cars in there, proper what should be real life liveries. As for what's coming next, as Harry and Co have alluded to, next up we go to Knock Hill on Friday for the next instalment of the caterhamracer.com 420R series. And again, unlike real life where they're on the reverse layout, they're on the traditional regular clockwise layout they'll be using that like touring cars and co use regularly, and that'll be at, once again, regular time around about 20 past to the 8:30 on this Facebook page, caterhamracer.com. And for the Academy cars, they'll be back out on the 11th, and they'll be heading up to one of the most picturesque circuits in the country, Anglesey in North Wales, the Isle of Anglesey on the Welsh coast, and that's on Monday the 11th of May, once again at around about 20 past to 8:30 kicking off. Chris, final thoughts. Some great racing for the Academy cars on a long circuit, and I think as we come to some more circuits where handling might be more favourable and some of the twistier circuits compared to speed, it might possibly bring out some different characteristics and some different front runners depending on driving style and who prefers what.
Yeah, we've just seen the Academies going around one of the longest tracks in the UK, and now we're just about to go and see the 420s going around Knock Hill, which is a really tight and twisty circuit. So it's certainly going to be different in character, and I can't wait.
Good stuff. Well, neither can I, and we'll both be here once again to guide through all the action. Again, if you've been watching on Facebook, thank you ever so much, and do be sure to follow the page and visit the website, caterhamracer.com. All the information is going to be there on the results of the races and everything else, as well as the calendar. And if you're a Caterham racer, whether it is in the motorsport land or even graduates or elsewhere, and you've got a set of Corsa and a PC, or you can easily get one, and you want to take part as well, I'm sure you can just message Chris or send a message to the website or the page. He'll be able to tell you how to get involved, and who knows, you could be on the grid if you're a fellow Caterham racer alongside like-minded people such as James Murphy and Harry Senior and everyone else. That concludes it. So from myself, Scott Woodwiss, and Chris Hutchinson, and all of us here in the series at caterhamracer.com, thanks for watching, and we will see you on Friday when we head north of the border to virtual Knock Hill for the next round of the 420Rs. But until then, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Goodbye.